This afternoon, History of the Heartland is a great pleasure to be with Marie Rademacher. And Marie, you're the Director of Catholic Charities, and you have been here in Decatur since,
I've been in Decatur since I came to Milliken in 1945.
Yes.
But I've actually continued to live here, and I've been the area director since 1985.
1985. So that's incredible. About 34 years then.
Right.
And we'll come back to that. We're going to talk a lot about your professional impact in social services in the community, which is an amazing story. But first, I kind of want to go back in time a little bit and talk about your beginnings and
far back.
And you're growing up. Yeah, and you're growing up. And you grew up in a small town of Verdun, Illinois. Is that correct?
Right, that's correct.
Can you tell us a little bit about, what was life like? What was your early life like? What are your early memories?
Life was wonderful. It was a small town, under 4,000 population, and you knew everybody. And you had many, many friends that went to the same schools with you, and we would all walk to school together. We'd meet on each corner, and we first would try to call on not private lines, they were party lines in those days, call up and say, what are you wearing to school today, and so we'd try to connect all of that important stuff, and then we'd meet and go to school together, and going to grade school and high school was just a joy in a small town. Everybody was your friend, and we got along really well, and I belonged to the Catholic faith, so I attended the Catholic parish there. My parents were very involved in that. And my parents were very giving people, so they taught me, to give back and to do things for your neighbors and friends as needs arose. So I felt that it was just a wonderful, wonderful way to be raised in a small community, feel a part of that community, and connect with people, and feel that you had a place in life, you had a place in this world, a comfortable place.
Now this was what, the 1930s then when you were
I was born in 1927.
27,
and
okay.
so I left then when I graduated high school in 1945.
Yeah.
Basically, I never went back to live there. I went back to visit many times over the years and had wonderful memories of those times in my life too. But basically, I was in Decatur. I came to Milliken. Then I was 1 year in Springfield to work for Springfield Catholic Charities as a case aide to see what social work was all about. Then I decided to go to graduate school, and so after that, I was invited to come here to work as a caseworker for Catholic Charities. That was my life, starting in Catholic Charities professionally and as a family.
Well, we talked a little bit about your starting at Milliken in the fall of 1945. The war had just ended. But if you go back before that, not that many women went to university at that time. Did you always know that you wanted to go to university? Was it your parents' expectation that you would?
Well, obviously, my parents did not go to college. But yes, I always knew that I wanted to have some higher education than high school, and I wanted to have a career. Yeah. And I just felt a need I became interested in social work. I became interested in that. I became interested in how the mind works as well. So I was thinking of psychology, you know, and I thought, how can I put all that together? Right. Most of my friends did not go to college. You're very right about that. And so it was different. It was very different being an only child from a small town, leaving home, and all of a sudden you're on a college campus, which is very different. I was living in a dorm. I never had to share rooms or anything with anybody before, but I learned very quickly how to do that, and got along fine with it. And then I pledged a sorority, so I moved into the sorority house for the last 3 years of schooling. Okay. But it was, I just brought my small town life with me into my big time life. Okay. I just did. I was just that same girl, you know, and I just had a wonderful, wonderful education and a wonderful time and a wonderful background.
Well, tell us a little bit about just the atmosphere. So the you know, you'd experienced this this great drama of the war, right?
Right.
Really in your high school years.
Yes.
And now that great drama was coming to an end.
Right.
And all the soldiers and sailors and Marines were coming home.
Right.
Many of them were using the GI Bill to go back to school.
Right.
And now all of a sudden you're a part of that whole scene. What was it like?
Well, first of all, let's backtrack a little bit. When I was in high school, of course, that was a very scary and sad time during those war years. And basically, I'd go to school. I would see someone was not there. Some
Right.
guy friend was not any longer there, which meant to me they enlisted.
Yes.
And so there were a lot of friends enlisting in the service. And throughout those war years, there were some that were missing in action, some that were actually killed. So we did a lot of praying for those poor souls over there, you know, fighting for our country.
Yeah.
And we girls were left behind, and we just gathered together. We didn't know a lot about what was going on, but we spent time writing letters to all of our friends that were in the service. We spent time doing mundane things like dancing to the big band music, you know, with an emphasis on Frank Sinatra. We all had a crush on Mr. Sinatra, of course, I still do. But anyway, that, and then we were, you know, curling our hair, painting our fingernails, just doing those things that girls do when they get together and talk about the guys that were no longer with us. Well, then, when I came to Milliken, let's see, I don't want to forget anything about that period of time. I think if there's something I should be telling you. I felt like we were kind of silly, giddy young women that had really no real idea of what was going on over there or what our friends were going through. I really felt that. When the war ended, it was my freshman year at Milliken, and as you say, veterans were coming back on the GI Bill to get their education. Some were married, and there were Quonset huts on Milliken campus for them to live in.
Okay.
Yeah. And I tell you, it was just party time.
Yeah.
It was just party time. These guys didn't seem to want to talk about what they'd been through.
Right.
They seemed to dedicated to get an education, to have a little fun, to loosen up a bit. And that's exactly what we did.
Yeah.
As far as Decatur was concerned, my life was mainly the campus life.
Yeah.
We didn't have cars. Very few people had cars. When we went anywhere, it was by bus. We might have occasionally taken a trip downtown to do a little bit of shopping.
Yeah.
But very rarely did we get away from the campus life. Because I belonged to a sorority, there were a lot of social events. They were mainly teas and dances. So we did get to go to like the country club or a hotel downtown to a formal event.
Yeah.
But our life was mainly on campus.
Yeah.
So Decatur really didn't become well known to me. I went to the parish, but I went to Mass by bus.
Yeah.
And Decatur didn't really become a town to me, a city to me, until I came here to work.
Yeah.
Because I was all wrapped up in the college life.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit about, I mean, dancing was a bigger deal then than it is now.
Oh, my.
And people used to meet each other, right, at dances.
Right.
How did that work? How, you know, I mean, were these just...
Well, sometimes it was a date. Sometimes it was a, I would like you to go with me, yes, I will, type thing. But often it was a group.
Yeah.
A group of guys, a group of girls getting together. There was a dance floor. There was an orchestra. And there were some people that, I hate to use the term, that classified themselves as wallflowers because they didn't know how to dance,
right.
you know. Or there were some that weren't asked to dance, maybe, and that was sad. I didn't like that.
Yeah.
But the rest who did dance, and I was one of them, we did this constantly, but you held on to the person. It's not like today where you're standing apart. And I love today. I have daughters and sons that are all in today's world, and I'm with them.
Yeah.
But in those days, you knew the guy, you held on to the guy, you let him lead.
Right.
you dancing, and it was beautiful dancing to
Yeah.
lovely ballads,
Yeah.
really beautiful.
Yeah.
And then there were the jitterbug stage,
Yeah.
where you fast danced and showed off a little
Yeah.
bit and kicked those heels up quite a bit.
Right.
But
But there was a physicality to the dance. I mean, you
There
were
was.
holding the
Was.
man you were dancing with, and did you get a sense of the person from
right.
that? Yeah.
And actually, I love to jitterbug and
Yeah.
fast dance, and so at Milliken, at the sorority house, I did give some lessons. I mean, I was not a teacher by any means, but there were some guys that would say, I want to be able to do this.
Right.
I want to be able to do that. So we'd get together in the evenings and practice, and they would learn and feel a little more comfortable out on the dance floor because they were dating some of my girlfriends,
Right.
So, yes, it was very special. And in those days, your date consisted of a movie,
Uh-huh.
going out to dinner, and dancing.
And where did you go to dance?
Well, we danced at the sorority house. We had exchanges with the
okay.
sororities and fraternities, so there
Okay.
was that.
So you'd come home, essentially, and then there'd be dancing at the house.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. And actually, there also, I want to go back to high school years, was the same kind of thing, 'cause the boys were already off to service.
Yeah.
So those that were left behind, and we girls, would after school go downtown to a little cafe. It was called the Verd Inn because we were from Verdon. And so we would go in there and play the jukebox and dance our feet off and
Yeah.
have a Coke, maybe
Yeah.
some French fries. French fries and hamburgers were becoming popular then.
Okay.
That was kind of the new food thing.
Right.
And then we'd go home and hear from our parents about not being hungry when our mothers had cooked a wonderful meal for us, and then saying, get in there and get your homework done, but it was all done very well. We all got along, but then when I came to Milliken, there was a place, and I'm so sorry now, I can't remember the name of it. There was a place downtown. It's been several different things. I want to say the Illini Ballroom. Does that ring a bell, maybe? Well, anyway, that was a place where you could go, and it was okay to go without a date.
Okay.
A group of girls could go in there, and it was not frowned upon.
Right.
Otherwise, you did not go into, restaurants or dancing places without a date.
Right.
Unless it was a school project or a school event, and then you all went together.
Okay. Now you did swing dancing.
Oh, yes.
Were you a contest winner in swing dancing?
Well, I won those school ones.
You
not
did?
big time,
Okay.
just school ones,
Yeah,
where they
yeah.
kind of would vote and say, oh, she's
Okay.
pretty good, let's give her a 1, that kind of thing. I loved it. I
Yeah.
loved it.
Yeah.
I think my dancing years are over. The rhythm is still in the body, and I still
Yeah.
bop up and down when I hear it, but I don't get out and do it anymore. I taught my kids, though,
Okay.
that kind of stuff. Now they're teaching me their kind of stuff.
Well, that was probably the beginnings of the precursors to rock and roll. I
Oh, it
suppose.
was,
Yeah.
definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. And I love rock and roll, too. Yeah, I do. But it was a very special time, and that was something that you could enjoy doing together and get to know each other
Yeah.
and help each other out. And the songs were related to happy times and sad times, and you always had a guy that you had a special song with.
Sure.
This was our song,
Yeah.
kind of
Well,
thing.
did you have any favorite songs that you remember from that period?
Well, I liked all of Frank Sinatra's
Yeah,
songs,
sure.
And I remember one, it wasn't his most famous one, but it applied to what we were doing. Saturday night is the loneliest night of the week,
Okay.
because Saturday night that was date night, and when the guys were in service, they were gone,
Okay.
so that was a good one. And I like That's Life, because I figure that is life. That song portrays what life is all about.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to think, there's another Sinatra one, now it's leaving me. All the Way, I like that one, yeah. There were just so many of them,
Yeah.
so many of them.
Now, so what was your major at Milliken? Was it psychology, social work?
Yeah, it was a composite major of psychology and sociology, and
Okay.
a minor in philosophy.
Okay. Now, did you already know that you wanted to get into social work
Yes.
at that time?
Well, it was firmed up. Excuse me, I'm interrupting.
Sure.
It was firmed up. I knew, I had an inkling that that's what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
But it was firmed up by the professor, Dr. Boyle was his name, that taught those classes, some of those classes. And it was really firmed up when I was at Millikan that I knew I wanted to do something in a helping profession. I wasn't sure what part of the helping profession, but something, yeah.
And had you had earlier experiences growing up where you were able to help others in need, or?
Yeah. My parents role modeled very well on giving back to the community. They were very good at helping their neighbors and doing things for the parish and visiting the sick. And I saw that kind of thing growing up. And there were some people in our near neighborhood that were less fortunate than we were, although we were just middle class people, but they were less fortunate, and I would take the kids out and play with them and just wash their hair maybe, or just anything I could do to make them feel better and help their parents. It wasn't babysitting exactly. I didn't get paid for anything, but it was like helping the mother get along better with her day of work, you know. And so I do remember doing that. And one thing that really strikes me, am I talking too fast?
No.
Okay. One thing that really strikes me is that in our small town, there was a man-made lake, and it was about a mile from town, and it was about a mile long itself, and it was a man-made lake that was called the Tank because the trains that would come in would stop there and tank up, and it was also a swimming hole. We'd go swimming there, but the free riders on the train that were called then hobos or tramps, you know, would come into town then and go to the residences. They got to know which ones to go to and try to get some food.
Sure.
My mother would make sandwiches, and my job as a little kid in grade school was to sit on the back porch and hand out the sandwiches to these unfortunate men. No fear of anything. Just give them something because they needed food. So I call that a forerunner. Fast forward 50 years, and I call that a forerunner to the Catholic Charities Food Pantry that I now get paid to run.
So this theme really goes through your whole life, from the beginnings of your life, and the influences and the role modeling from your parents.
Yeah, I really think so.
Now, one of the other experiences that you had in high school that we didn't really talk about is that you worked as a waitress for a time.
Well, and that was very brief because I was not very good. I was not very good at it. I had a very dear family friend who managed the restaurant when the owner went into the service, and she managed the restaurant, and I was in there all the time anyway. And she said, "Marie, would you help me out?" And I said, "I'll sure try, Margaret. I'll sure try." You know. So, but I spill things, and I was too busy chatting with everybody, you know, that I wasn't paying attention. I remember our local doctor came in, and you know how they have those cases with goodies in them, and in that day, they didn't only have cake and pie, they had some packaged things like Twinkies and so forth. Well, he said he wanted a Twinkie, so I just pulled it out of the case and plopped it down on him. I didn't think to maybe, you know, nicely maybe open it for him and give him a plate, a fork. Because we ate Twinkies, we just peeled it off and chewed them, you know. And I thought, I'm not cut out for this. I remember spilling a cup of coffee once, and it was fairly hot on somebody. I was so embarrassed. My life as a waitress was brief and not very good. I wasn't fired or anything. I elected not to do it.
Yeah, you know you did. It wasn't your life's work.
It wasn't my life. No, it wasn't my life. But growing up, I didn't have jobs like kids do now in high school and in college. I really didn't. I don't think I'm forgetting anything. I did help out a couple of women with their children. I guess you'd call it babysitting, but we never used that term,
Right.
babysitting.
Yeah.
So
you had the experience at Millikan that really solidified your notion that you wanted to get into a helping profession.
Definitely.
And then you did you go to Springfield then for a time to work for?
Well, since I lived in Verdon and I was graduated from college and figuring out what my life was going to be like, I knew about Catholic Charities in Springfield, and so I went into town and I asked if there was something I could do that would solidify for me that I wanted to be in the social work arena somehow. And the executive there happened to be a priest and said, yes, you come here, we'll put you on as a case aide, you can see what everybody does as a case worker. So that's why I went, and I commuted the 25 miles into town and worked a year there. And while I was there, that helped me formalize that I needed to go to graduate school. It was just beginning to be the thing that if you wanted to stay in this profession, you better do a little bit more with education. So I chose St. Louis University and wanted to get the master's in social work. I was there 2 years, got everything done in 2 years, and then I came back out, but was asked immediately by the Decatur office if I would be interested, since I went to Millikan and maybe had some friends still around here, if I would be interested in coming to Decatur Catholic Charities as a caseworker. They only had one person. They had a secretary and one person, a priest that was officially the executor, but he only came in to sign checks and how are things going and things like that. We did the work. And so I was there as a caseworker. And while there, now that was in 1952. 52. And while there, I, of course, met the gentleman that I would later marry, and my first date with him was the annual charity ball, of which all of these things you're seeing in the background here, these little booklets here, are of that event. And then I became pregnant while working, and so my life was kind of short-lived there. It was only like between 3 to 4 years there, and then I left work.
Now, where was it where was the charity ball?
Okay, the charity ball, when it first started, I think was in maybe 48 before I came here, and they had an event that spanned was 2 evenings at the Orlando Hotel. Was the dance. It wasn't a dinner. It was the dance. At the St. Nicholas Hotel, it was the card party. So people who didn't want to go to the dance played cards. So that was a dual event. And
but was that going on at the same time?
Yeah. Same night, same time.
Which venue you wanted. All right.
So I don't know that anybody went from one to the other. I don't think that happened, but they decided, we want to play cards or we want to do this. And that was a dating affair or couples, Well, I think for cards there could be a table of people, mixed, could go. But that was a wonderful, wonderful event, and it was their only fundraiser. So actually, that was in place till, 25 years maybe. And then they stopped it. And so then I brought it back to life when I came here. And so our first one was in, I want to say this right now, there's a date up there. That first, 1998. So we've had something every year since then.
Wonderful.
Because I thought, we need a fundraiser.
And
what more fun than to have something that tells the community who we are and what we do. So.
So you kind of went from social worker to really raising children then at that point.
Yes, I did. Yes, I did have 3 daughters from my first marriage, and my husband died very young, unexpectedly. And then I was widowed for 5 to 6 years, and then I remarried a widower with 4 children, 2 boys and 2 girls, and we had a baby, and within 3 years he died unexpectedly. So I was married twice, a total of 9 years, and I had 8 kids altogether.
Yeah.
And I was determined to get everybody going well.
So you were busy. Yeah.
And thank God I was able to do it. My parents were wonderful people, and they would come to visit. My dad always brought gifts for the kids, you know, and we didn't have, I lived in a neighborhood that was somewhat affluent, and many of their friends would be taking extensive vacations and trips and things. My kids were happy to belong to the surf club, the local pool, to go to the park, where a lot of things were happening in the park, and never even realized that they weren't doing all these other things. It didn't matter to them, you know.
Now, where were you living?
I was living in South Shores.
Okay, in South Shores.
In a smaller home on Glenview Drive, and then during my second marriage, we built the home that I have now, that I've been living in ever since.
So were your kids then going to the South Shores school?
Well, they went to Holy Family. Holy Family became a parish, and later a school.
Yes.
And we were one of the beginning families of that.
Okay.
In fact, I even taught there one year.
You did.
When I was not doing this kind of work. The pastor said he had a large first grade, too large, and he said, I need help. And he said, could I get you and someone else he knew that I also knew to split a first grade and teach? And I said, oh, Father Francis, I am a social worker. I am not a teacher in any sense of the word. And he said, you've raised those kids, you can teach, especially first grade, because then without preschools and without kindergarten and all that stuff, these kids didn't know how to wipe their noses or tie their shoes until halfway through the year, so I felt like I didn't do too badly.
Yeah.
But I met the second husband, he was widowed, and his family moved into that area, and his daughter was in my class.
Okay.
And so he came to a parent-child meeting, and that was it. I mean, then I think, I knew he was interested, and I kind of thought, well, I don't know. Raising someone else's children, their mother had died, and I had never thought, I took long enough till I was 27 to find Mr. Right in the first place to realize that I could settle down, I could be faithful, I could have a family, I could do all the things a good wife and mother were supposed to do, And I thought, oh dear, I don't know, going through all of that again with 4 strange children, But I made the decision to do it because I loved him and I liked those kids, and I thought, well, I can do this, So we did, surprisingly, and built this home and put everybody together, tried to see that everybody became brothers and sisters, and it wasn't as perfect as it might sound to you, It had its ups and downs, but it was pretty darn good.
Yeah,
we made it work pretty good.
I guess it was. You had the real Brady Bunch kind of thing before they made it a TV series.
We went to the movie, the Brady Bunch movie at the Lincoln Theater. We all went, baby in arms. Then I had a baby that second marriage, so we all went, sat the whole big row and watched this show. And that was Lucille Ball and Henry Fonda. Okay, that was before the second movie was made, before the series.
Right.
We identified with that, I'll tell you. We identified wholly with that. But then he died, and so I was a mother, mainly, and a good neighbor, I hope, and a good parishioner. I did some things like the St. Teresa Style Show and the Spaghetti Supper at church, things like that. But I couldn't do a lot.
Yeah.
I couldn't do a lot.
You had 8 children? Mm-hmm. Wow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But a couple of them were older. By the time my second husband, Joe, had died, the oldest boy was off to college. Okay. And he became a doctor later. Okay. He's a local doctor here in town. And then the oldest daughter was a sophomore at Bradley in Peoria. And so I didn't raise them from little on. The other two, pretty much. Because they fit in with my 3 girls, their ages, so there were 5 that were like all the same age, sort of, and then a baby, and then these 2 older ones.
That's fantastic. And so you raised those children and launched them, into the world, and now they're grown and adults. And what happened then? What were you thinking, or had you already thought this through as before the last one left home?
You mean about working?
Yeah.
Well, that was a strange thing. One of my neighbors called me and she said, Marie, I've heard you say that someday you're going to have to go back to work. Because we were on like veterans pension and school scholarships, and they had part-time jobs, and they really worked their way through helping as best as they could. My parents helped some too.
Yeah.
So I was able to stay home.
Yeah.
A lot of women
Yeah.
were not able to stay home in that position.
Right.
And I was very fortunate that I could. We did without some things, but not without any of the basics. Never, ever. But anyway, she said, there's a program out at Richland called, awful name, called Displaced Homemakers. And I said, what's that all about? She said, well, why don't you give them a call and find out? Well, it was about getting women back into the workforce that had been widowed or divorced, getting them back in. And so I called out there, and it so happened that I did know the person that was running the program somewhat, because she was a teacher at St. Teresa, had been and taught my kids.
Yeah.
And so I called and asked her, Kathy Sorensen was her name, nice person, and I called and asked her about the program, and she says, well, Marie, you could teach this program. She said, I need somebody to come out and help me with this. She said, why don't you come out for an interview, and because that was a formality you had to go through, and why don't you come out for an interview, and we'll talk about it and see what we can work out. Well, I went out for the interview, and I started working the next week. So anyway, so I was a displaced homemaker, but I was helping this displaced homemakers get back in.
Okay.
So I was there a year and was asked to return, but in the meantime, let's see, I'm trying to think of her name. The executive director of Family Service of Decatur is not in existence anymore. Oh my, I should mention her name here. I should, but it won't come to me right now. But anyway, there's been so many people in my life that once in a while I forget some of them. I have to think who they are. But anyway, she called me and she said, I understand you're back at work and you've got a social work degree and we need a caseworker. Would you come to work for Family Service? And I said, well, I'd love to consider it, So I had the interview and she hired me. So I was back into the workforce doing some counseling, a lot of crisis pregnancy and adoptions with Family Service. Well, I was there about a year and a half, and I got a call from Sonny Bradley, and I knew him from my parish, and he and his wife were friends of some friends of mine, so we were kind of connected a little bit. And he said, I'm on the board at Catholic Charities, and they're losing their director, and would you like to have the job? And I said, I never had to do a resume or never had to do anything. That doesn't happen nowadays.
Right.
That would never happen nowadays. But anyway, so I went for the interview and got the job. As it turned out, the previous executive director had been a priest, or was a priest, and he was leaving, and very intermittently there was someone that was a female that was the intermittent, or in temporary is what I want to say, director, but she was thinking of doing something else, and so it was the first time that someone like me had stepped into this position, and the new director had been interviewed just that previous fall. So there was a new director in September, and I came on in February. So we were both new. He was what my boss is now in Springfield. He was that position. And then, and I was the area director here then. And so that's how that happened, that I got into the workforce. just kind of by invitation, sort of.
Yeah. Well, you certainly had the background. You'd been at really every level. You'd been an assistant at school. Then you raised your families, and then you got back in and had more experience until then you were kind of ready to do the role that now you've been doing for 34 years now.
I did not know what an area director was supposed to do. I will confide in you that I did not have a lot of training, and I did not have a mentor to copy from, but I picked up pretty fast what you were supposed to do. Sometimes I had to do something, and I'd think, I didn't know I had to do that, but...
We're going to come back in part 2 and talk at some length about your experiences
here
in this role.
I'd love to do that.
But before we do that, I want to, you're an amazing person, a very youthful and energetic person, and I don't think people would know. I mean, I certainly would never guess that you're 92, and so you have an amazing energy about you. So one of the questions, if you don't mind me asking, is just kind of what's your secret? A lot of people, get frustrated or maybe overlooked for doing more at much younger ages than you are. What has been your secret, if you will, to really being able to continue to contribute in a job which it's not a low stress job?
Well, I've been asked this before, so I should have an answer, but I really don't.
Yeah.
And I really feel that I've been blessed with good health. I've been blessed with energy. I've tried to do the right things to maintain. I don't have an obsession with anything.
Right.
But I try to hit the middle road on what you should do, you know.
Yeah.
And the only thing I can say, and I maintain it, that I just look positively at things, and I'm not frightened by change at all. And I have a sense of humor. I do believe that, and I think that helps me a lot. We laugh a lot in our family. We laugh a lot. I have a lot of social workers in my family, believe it or not. But we laugh a lot, and we kid each other, and we try not to get down too much. If something is happening that's not the most pleasant thing, we try to rise above it. I did lose my 2 husbands. That was sad. The children didn't have a father figure. They had a wonderful grandfather, just one grandfather, though. They had a wonderful grandfather and then a wonderful grandmother.
Yeah.
And I surrounded them with positive people, and I surrounded myself with positive people.
Right.
I would never turn anybody away that wanted to be a friend or that wanted just your companionship, but I've learned that life can be short. Mine isn't, but life can be short, and I think that it's okay to pick certain people that you are more comfortable with and that give you energy and give you a good feeling too. I don't see anything wrong with that. You can't have everybody in your life, and I would never hurt anybody, but I do kind of pick and choose what I want to do and whom I want to do it with.
Right. And so you surround yourself with people who
have fun,
if I may say, who had a positive, who are positive people.
Right.
And you're a positive person.
And, if there's someone that's brooding or depressed or whatever, I would try my best. I did counseling for quite a while, so I know the ins and outs of trying to help people, but I would not be in that setting for a long time. I just have to remain positive, or I want to. And I don't know where it all came from. I really don't know. My father was like this a lot, and my mother was more private and a little more of a quiet type, but she was very friendly, but she was still different than my father. And I remember my father and I walking from our house to downtown, which was 3 blocks, And as we walked, he'd say to me, Marie, now I want you to speak to everybody, and I want you to speak first. So I learned that at a young age.
Yeah.
Now we don't tell our children that exactly
Right.
in that way,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
it's a little scarier.
Yeah.
And I don't mean that life never had its bad things in it, but we didn't have to lock our doors, or we didn't.
Right.
We knew our neighbors. We sat out on the front porch and helloed everybody that went by, and we just weren't afraid.
Yeah.
May I tell you one funny story?
Of course, yeah.
When we talked about the war years,
Yeah.
we had this big standing radio in our living room, and it had a little rectangular square with the word television written across it. And I said to my mother, what is that? And she says, well, Marie, she said, I think someday we're going to be able to see what you're hearing now. And I thought, how is a big family going to surround themselves around this monstrosity of a piece of equipment and see what's going on in this little thing here? So that was the forerunner of now TV taking over our lives, so to speak, in so many ways. That little thing, that's what I thought was going to be television.
That's fascinating. I never heard that before.
So I was just a stupid kid then.
Well, Marie Rademacher, this has been wonderful. Thank you so much for spending and sharing, spending time and sharing with History of the Heartland.
Well, I appreciate that. I appreciate your asking me and your being interested in hearing about it.
We'll come back for part 2 and talk more about your experience at Catholic Charities.
Thank you very much.
Now, Marie, when you came back to Catholic Charities, this was in the early 1960s, you were located right by the transfer house. Is that correct?
Yes, we were located by the transfer house. Mm-hmm.
And what are your memories of that particular area, in particular how you'd open up? And
well, we were a very small agency and a very small office, and we were right in the hub of everything, though, because we were right downtown, and a lot of people worked downtown in those days and roamed the streets during their lunch hour, to visit and wave at each other and have a sandwich or a piece of pie or whatever.
It was a busy place.
It was a busy place. The transfer house sat right in the middle of downtown there, right in the center where the 4 main streets merged. And we were just a stone's throw across the street from that. And I do have a story about the transfer house. Do you want that story?
Yeah.
Well, there were benches around the transfer house, and many of the what we would call now homeless men would sit there and visit with each other. And when I would come to work and unlock the door, if I was the first one there, and often I was, they would see me unlock the door, and then they'd start coming over. And, of course, they wanted something and thought we might be able to help them. And they'd pull a rosary bead out of their pocket and plop it down on the counter, thinking this would really assure them that they'd get what they wanted. Unfortunately, we didn't always have what they needed or even wanted. And but we always had some kind words to say, a little bit of conversation, and always a big smile and a sorry, we can't do this, or maybe we could help them. But I tried to assure them, they didn't have to be Catholic to get services.
Right.
All people were welcome to come there, but they thought the rosary bead would ensure them that they would get something.
Right. That's interesting that they all had.
They had where they got them.
ready,
I don't know where they got them. Maybe some of them were Catholic. I don't know where they got them, but they had their rosary beads.
Well, let's talk about some other, kind of venues around town. Now, even going back to when you were at Milliken in the late 1940s, you visited some of the iconic places of that era. You got to go to the Lincoln Theater. You got to go to the Orlando Hotel. The Varsity. What were your impressions of some of these places?
Well, everything was new to me, and everything was big to me from a small town. That's the way I would view it.
Yeah.
And everything was exciting because you not only had your campus life and near campus life, but you occasionally got off campus, even though we didn't have cars in those days. We took the bus. Sometimes someone had a car and about 10 of us would pile in. No seat belts or that kind of concern in those days. And It was exciting to see a hotel. I don't believe it was my first hotel, but it was a hotel that I was close to. Usually if you saw a hotel, you might have taken a vacation to another state, then you saw a hotel.
Yeah.
But this was right there.
So this is
The
your Orlando hotel? Or
the Orlando Hotel and the St. Nick.
And the St. Nick, yeah.
Uh-huh. We had a lot of dances there, a lot of fraternity and sorority exchange dances and things of that nature, and Milliken teas, and everything wasn't always on campus.
And what was your impression of these places, if you can kind of recall what?
Well, I thought they were fabulous. I thought they were elegant. I thought they were what the big town, what the big city was all about.
Yeah.
And I did have relatives in Chicago, so I did get to Chicago and see some nice places there. When I was there, they'd take me around. But Decatur Decatur to me was big time, close by.
How was, how are people dressed, and who was working in these places?
Well, women didn't wear pants at all in those days, never. Women always dressed appropriately, and in the summertime they might have a halter dress on, but usually they were more covered than that. In the wintertime, many of them had fox furs around their neck, and white gloves, and always a hat. Always a hat. I remember thinking about when hatless days came and poofy hairdos came in. What a treat it was not to have to put a hat on and mash down what you'd worked hard to accomplish, and have it go to pot right away. Yeah. But women always dressed elegantly. Men were always in suits and shirts and ties, usually just a white shirt. That was before they started wearing the colored shirts. Right. And long coats, overcoats were a thing of the winter months. Yeah. Many women had furs. Yeah. It just was very nice to see how people dressed and how they behaved. And
were they more formal? Or?
They were more formal. Yes, yeah. I remember formal dances. Oh my, the formal dances were just elegant. The place was always just decorated beautifully, and everybody was dressed in formal attire, and you just felt like you were almost a movie star.
So these would have been in ballrooms then, right? The Orlando Hotel would have had a ballroom?
Yeah. Oh, yes.
And what was that like? Was it a large room?
Well, there were large rooms, and the windows were very different. They were decorative windows and chandeliers. Okay. And then a cloakroom, usually. I don't remember, they didn't have bars there in those ballrooms, as I recall it. Nowadays, when you go somewhere, there's always a makeshift bar of some kind or other, but they didn't have that built in. The bar was downstairs in another part of the hotel.
And what are your memories of the theaters? Now, you attended the Lincoln.
The Lincoln Theater, the Varsity Theater, and the Alhambra. And I'm trying to think. There was another theater out. Well, that was later, though. But those were the main ones. The Lincoln was the main one.
The Lincoln was the main one.
The Lincoln was the main one. And it was always fun to go across the street to the popcorn shop.
Okay.
Dell's popcorn shop. Even though the theater had their own popcorn, you could go in there and get popcorn, but could also get fudge and nuts and take that into the theater with you.
Okay.
And they just were elegant and comfortable, and you just enjoyed the movie better because of the surroundings you were in. It just was like you were in a special place. Yeah, it really was.
Yeah. And then let's talk then about some of the restaurants that you would have experienced during those years at Milliken. Of course, the Blue Mill was right there. Right.
And the Blue Mill was the place to go. In fact, we ate Sunday dinner there always because the dormitories or the sorority houses often didn't serve meals on those days. And it was a place to go for dinner, but it was also a place to go for dancing. They had a nice little dance floor, and they had a three-piece combo that would roll around playing. And it was just fun, fun. It made you feel like your date was very special because you were in a special place.
Yeah. Yeah. And how did people dress for those?
Well, I remember wearing hats in there.
Yeah.
I remember one summer when I had a white dress on with a black belt and big black buttons and a great big black hat that kept getting in the way. And my partner would say, "Would you take that hat off when we're dancing?" Because I kept hitting him in the face with my hat.
And what were some of the other restaurants that you remember from that time?
Well, there was the winery close by, but it was sort of out of bounds for the Milliken people.
Yeah.
There were some sneaking in and outs at times by various students, but still it was a no-no. And then there was the
And you wouldn't go through the front door, would you?
Oh, no, there's a back door.
There's a back door. So you'd sneak into the back door?
The back door, that's right. Behaved.
Yeah.
They behaved. There was no drinking. They drank Cokes, but they were just wanted to see what it was like.
Yeah.
And then the Pom Pom Cafe was right near the Blue Mill, and that was frequented every Monday night, I know, because of after sorority meetings, everybody went down there at the Pom Pom and had
What was
Coke.
it? No,
Coke was the big thing.
Coke. To have a Coke and...
Yeah.
Okay.
And then on campus, there was the what we call the barracks. And they served, you could get some breakfast there, some breakfast type food there. I don't remember a grill, but I remember like cereal or breakfast rolls, things like that. And Coke and candy bars and things of that nature. And in fact, more often than not, I think I almost went through 4 years in Milliken on a Coke and a candy bar for breakfast.
Yeah.
But that was my fault if I did that.
Yeah.
It wasn't that there wasn't better food.
Right.
And but I had forgotten to mention to think about the barracks for a long time. That was very popular.
Then somewhere off campus, you'd mentioned the restaurant called the Farm.
Yes, there was a restaurant called the Farm that was like a family style type eating place. And I don't remember the location, but there was that. And I wish I could remember another one that we didn't go through that frequently, but if you were looking for some place different and if your family would be coming to town, it would be a place the family could go to. And I'm sorry, but I can't remember the name right now.
It's okay. Well, then fast forward. So then you were in Springfield for a time, and then you came back to Decatur. But in the early 1960s, then you were downtown, and you had an opportunity, of course, to be downtown and to get around the downtown area.
Right.
What were some of the... Well, first of all, what was downtown like at that time?
Very busy.
Yeah.
Very busy. Many people worked downtown.
Yeah.
And most people took their lunch hour at noon, so the streets were crowded, and you could see many of your contemporaries and friends, and you made friends.
Yeah.
You could sit in the park if you wanted to, and that's before the fountain.
Yeah.
And you could have lunch at various little stop-in places, and it was just a happening place. It just was really very, very friendly and very fun and very relaxing too.
What were some of the department stores that you used to like to go together?
I remember Gebhardt and Gushard, because I remember when you'd go in to buy a hat, women were seated in a chair with a mirror in front of them, and they brought the hat to you and tried it on. You did not go around seeing all these hats and say, I want to try that one, I want to try that one. They brought them to you. That was always a big experience. I remember that. I remember Lyndon Scruggs. I do remember that. And they had several floors and a lot of variety of home items and clothing. Do you remember that? And, I'm forgetting so many of them now. When things, are no longer there and someone else has taken their place, and 2 or 3 things have progressed to, then I forget about what was once there, unless a big event happened that really struck you as... Shopping was not that big of a deal. We didn't get to go that often.
But you'd often have lunch downtown. And,
yes.
And sometimes, in those days, drugstores would also double as
they did.
as restaurants, right?
They did. They had a counter with stools.
Yeah.
A couple of them might have had booths. And yes, you could get a variety of food there, plus do some other kind of shopping.
What was your favorite drugstore?
Well,
place?
it was right downtown, and I hope I'm saying it right, that it was Ray Craft's drugstore.
Okay.
And it was right by the Lincoln Theater.
Okay.
Went there almost every day,
Okay.
even went there sometimes after school.
Okay.
After work.
After work, yeah. And so, what was your favorite lunch?
Oh, dear God, you'd ask me that. Let's see.
Coke for sure, right?
Yeah, Coke for sure. Probably hamburger.
Hamburger and a Coke.
Probably
yeah,
hamburger.
Okay. And some of the other restaurants down there, Chinese Tea Garden.
Chinese Tea Garden was there, yes.
Yeah.
And the Surrey was downtown. And I'm trying to think of further down the street. There was a cafeteria below, and up above was a fine dining place. We didn't go there very often because cafeteria food wasn't my favorite at the time.
Yeah.
We kind of like to sit down and be waited on,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
And the fine dining piece, that was more like a date thing or a
Right.
big family thing if you were going out for a special occasion.
Yeah.
I am sorry. I'm not coming up with more things of that kind to tell you. Obviously, they didn't make that much of an impression on me, but I know they did at the time because I frequented them and I had a good time doing it.
Yeah. Well, the Chinese Tea Garden, of course, became pretty famous when it was featured in the movie that was set your indicator. But what was your memory of the Chinese Tea Garden?
The Chinese Tea Garden? Well, it had a couple of places that were kind of private. I think, as I recall, I think you stepped up, and it was like a table with a couple of chairs, and then they could pull curtains over, and you felt very secluded, very romantic, you know.
Yes.
Even if the food might not have been good, but it always was, but you felt very romantic in there. And then the rest of it was seating down, you know, on the other level, and it was just nice and, of course, convenient because it was right next door to where I worked.
Yes, right.
We didn't do that often, but it was really handy and very nice when we did go.
Kind of an
Very
unusual
nice.
place, yeah. And what is your memory of the Surrey?
Of what?
The Surrey.
The Surrey. I remember when my mother would come to visit, we'd go to the Surrey because we always liked their lunch and we always liked their desserts. And it was more like a place where a mother and daughter might go after maybe a little bit of shopping or visiting.
Yeah, that's wonderful.
So it was very nice. It was a lot of wood.
Well, that's wonderful. That's a wonderful addition to our conversation here. Well, Marie Rademacher, thank you so much for spending the time with us and for everything that you've done for the community, for History of the Heartland. Thank you.
Thank you.